And the way I think about it is, the quintuple aim has become the quintuple squeeze, really, for health networks everywhere.
In the end, nothing else matters. You can have a great booth at HIMSS. You can have an excellent webinar with 600 people showing up with backers, and you can create great content. But if it doesn't contribute towards pipeline, it's not defensible.
Hello and welcome to the Health Tech Marketing Show. I'm your host, Adam Turinas. I'm the CEO of Health Launchpad, and I want to thank you for joining us. If this is your first time listening, you can subscribe on any of your favorite podcast application, and you can also find us on YouTube. Just search for the Health Tech Marketing Show. I also want to give a big thank you to my friends at Healthcare Now Radio. I really appreciate all the support that you give us. Your radio station is amazing. And, it's just such an incredible resource for anybody who wants to stay current with everything going on in healthcare. And I'm especially grateful to you for the podcast network that you run, which has dramatically boosted the reach of this show. And we're getting in front of a lot more people thanks to you. Today, I am joined by my two great colleagues, Matthew Piette and Mark Erwich. They're both principals in Health Launchpad and longtime healthcare marketing executives. They'll tell you a little bit about their story. Mark has deep expertise in healthcare technology, is multiple times CMO, and Matthew has an incredible wealth of experience in biotech and life sciences, most recently working at Exact Sciences. And they're going to provide sort of both their perspectives on what's going on in healthcare through their respective lenses and what it's like to be a CMO in healthcare technology and biotech right now, and what some of the things are that they advise that if they were back in those seats, what they be focused on right now. There's a lot we're going to cover in this. So with that, let's get on with the show and introduce you to Mark and Matthew. Mark and Matthew, welcome to the show. So great that we can get the three of us together today. I was thinking about the three of us, and I thought it was so strange. Hey, we got two things. We got a lot in common, but there are two things that particularly stand out. One is all three of us have been in various aspects of healthcare for quite a long time. And so they have a different perspective on it based on the roles that we've had. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But the other thing is despite the fact we're all located here in the US, as the listener will be able to tell, we're all from somewhere else. So I thought what we would do is maybe kind of each one of us tell a little bit of our story about how we ended up in healthcare and how we ended up in the US. I'll carry on with mine. So I actually have a degree in neurophysiology and I did a bit of pharmacology as well. And coming out of university, I had two job offers. One was to go work for a big, sexy London advertising agency working on consumer packaged goods and retail and all that sort of fun stuff. And the other one was to go work for Glaxo as a junior brand manager, where I was going to start by being a salesperson. And at the age of 21, guess what I went for? I went for the big sexy ad agency. And I stayed in the advertising industry on the purely agency side for best part of 20 something years and didn't really touch healthcare in all those times. And then after that, through a long, boring, convoluted story, which I will spare the listener, I myself and a friend who are physicians started a healthcare technology company, which is kind of where I learned healthcare, particularly healthcare technology. And we sold that company in 2019. And then I started Health Launchpad because I wanted to go back to my first love, which is marketing, and my second first love, which is healthcare technology. How I ended up here is I've been here for a long time. Actually moved to the US in 1988. Because I met a wonderful woman called Alice, who's an American. I met her in the UK when she was over. And after a long distance relationship for a while, we got engaged and I moved over and we got married. And God, how many years is my old joke is I would have got less for murder, but we've been married for quite a while and still going strong. So that's why, and I've been a US citizen actually for about 20 years now. So I consider myself to be an American despite the funny accent. Matthew, what's your story?
Yeah, there are some similarities and real differences. Yeah, as you can tell, I'm also from the UK as a part of the British invasion. Yeah, so I graduated from Cambridge University in English literature and philosophy, which, and then you graduate and you say, what on earth am I going to do with this degree? And I guess to look at it on the positive side, it does teach you how to do things with words. So I started actually in the PR and communications area in the aviation industry for British airports, Stansted, Heathrow, etc. And then did a stint in Paris, and it was there that I was recently married, and my wife got offered a job with the US government for Voice of America. She's a BBC World Service journalist.
Oh, wow.
And so they offered her a job there, and we looked at each other and we said, this is the only way that we're probably ever going to be able to legally come to the United States. So we did, and because it is a land of opportunity, and we've been very grateful for all the years we've been here. So when I landed after a stint at a think tank in Washington, D.C., because that's where Voice of America is based, I entered into corporate America, Sprint, and then Motorola, then Honeywell, then Philips. And it was at Philips that I entered the healthcare space, became the director of brand lead for North America for Philips, which is a Dutch company, which maybe Mark can talk about later. And I've done a couple of stints in startups. I love to sort of oscillate between, big company and small company innovation. And most recently, I was at a startup called Thrive Earlier Detection, doing marketing, the founding marketing dude. And they got acquired by Exact Sciences, which is one of the largest diagnostic companies in the United States. It's the makers of Cologuard. And they themselves, very recently, they're in the process of acquisition by Abbott. So I've decided to strike out, use the experience that I've developed through this wonderful life here in America and apply it to US-based marketing as a consultant, and very happy to be part of Adam's ecosystem. So that's me. I'll hand over to Mark.
Thank you, Matthew. I'm really happy and excited to be here. My story is slightly different. After I graduated in the Netherlands, I started to work for Apple and worked for Apple for about 9 years. And obviously a lot of transition during that period. Then I started to work for Scansoft. Scansoft was a leader in document imaging and OCR technology. It was originally a spin-off from Xerox. And Scansoft got acquired by Nuance, or the name actually got changed in towards Nuance, is a better way of presenting that. Within Nuance, there were various different business units or divisions, however you want to call it. And initially, I did marketing for all of them. And as the company continued to grow, I was asked to select one of the divisions. I was really fascinated about the healthcare division, and particularly because it was so measurable, looking towards the US and very finite market. The number of hospitals, there's no new hospitals being built. And so with the campaigns that we did, I was very successful. And I like this blend of creative on one side and really the metrics on the other side, and bringing those together. So that got me in towards healthcare. And at some point, Nuance, I was originally working in the Netherlands. Then after some acquisitions, we got one acquisition in Belgium, moved the international headquarters from the Netherlands, from Amsterdam towards Belgium, worked there for a year or so. And then there was an opportunity to participate in a management exchange program. Now, the original plan was that we would move from Belgium to Boston, stay there for 18 months, and then go back to Belgium. But I'm still in Massachusetts, and so never got back to Belgium.
Yeah, that's great. That's really, really cool. What I love about working with you both is that you both bring a sort of different angle of healthcare, different aspects of healthcare. And what I'd be really interested to hear you both talk about is the subject area expertise that you've got, sort of like what your domain is and what you see as the big issues that are going on right now? What are the big factors in those industries? Mark, why don't you start with your superpower here?
Right. So to the provider market, looking towards healthcare technology specifically, I think we have a number of different areas that are changing and that have a major impact towards the way that hospitals and IDNs are buying. One is the constant change in towards regulatory new rules coming up with major impact and not immediately clear what the impact would be, has the entire C-suite on, okay, what is the implication of this? How do we address that? Two, pressure on margins continue to be a large push in healthcare. We see hospitals struggling with that. And although it was slightly better last quarter, there's still a major pressure point. And that results in towards smaller hospitals suffering and bigger hospitals looking towards how can they optimize their mix and look for more margin, higher margin procedures. And then finally, I would say some of that is immediate and some of that is longer term, but there is a shortage of clinicians, nurses, physicians, and all of that is another big pressure point.
So that's what's happening at the provider side. What about sort of the next step in the food chain or the value chain in terms of the companies selling to them? What are the challenges? What's the impact on them?
I think they see a number of different things. One is that it's harder to sell. Definitely more people being involved in the buyers group as a result of that longer discussion. And you really need to rely on your champion to bring your solution in good perspective towards all of those participants of the buyers group. I think there is conflicting information regarding the length of the sales cycle. We see two different things happening. In general, it's taking longer, but AI is definitely taking shorter. So AI solutions, there was some recent research from, Menlo Ventures. They looked specifically towards AI technology in hospitals, shorter sales cycle, because they want to see value now. I think those are the major implications there that we see as a result.
It definitely feels like, when I look across the Health Tech Marketing Network and the members of that who are in the main primarily in sort of selling solutions to providers and payers, is that there are companies that are doing really well. AI certainly is the predominant part of it. Other companies that have just an absolutely crystal clear ROI.
Yep.
That's really well aligned with all the way that healthcare systems are trying to cut costs and drive towards some structural changes, actually.
100%.
And then other companies that have very valuable solutions, but maybe a couple of years ago would have been seen as a must-have, and now sort of drifting into the nice to have area. It's really hard. It's really hard. Matthew, your background is much more in life sciences and biotech. So paint a picture of that industry, how it's structured, and what are the big drivers?
Yeah, I mean, just to echo what Mark said, I mean, many biotech companies are obviously selling into the hospital network. So they're subject to all those same vicissitudes that Mark was talking about. And the way I think about it is, the quintuple aim has become the quintuple squeeze, really, for health networks everywhere. And
explain that. Just someone said, yeah, I love that. But explain it a bit. First of all, what's the quintuple? Because it used to be the triple aim, then became the quadruple aim. I don't think I can say, what is the quintuple aim and what's the quintuple squeeze?
The quintuple aim is, better outcomes, one, at lower cost, two, with higher patient satisfaction, three, higher staff satisfaction, four, and a contribution to health equity, five.
Ah, there you go. I didn't know what that was. Okay, that was.
Every single one of those is subject to sort of real capital constraint and difficulty and staff shortages and everything. And biotech isn't immune from what's happening in the health systems world.
Yeah.
Having said that, it traditionally has this other avenue of direct to consumer, and you're seeing sort of really positive movement with GLP-1s. And then also oncology is becoming a growth area because people are becoming more susceptible to cancer earlier. For example, with colorectal cancer, is now 45, the people below So the population of those who suffer from oncological malignancies is growing. And that, sounds a little bit profiteering, but that increases the market, right?
Right.
So there are some positives and negatives, but, there have been some major layoffs at, say, Novartis headquarters recently, and a few other large companies, but that tend to be more protected from these economic and regulatory changes. I think it's the mid-sized to small-sized biotechs, struggle because they're often associated with only one technology or solution. And if that goes south, the whole company can go south. So there's a lot of, I think you used it, fear of messing up in large parts of the sector. On top of that is, and I think Mark alluded to it, is, some uncertainty at the regulatory level, the FDA, NIH, CDC, the United States Protective Task Force, those sorts of regulatory bodies that have been sort of sleepy, steady state have gone through quite a bit of change recently, which then provides kind of uncertainty in the market in general.
Yeah.
But, biotech is a mighty sector. It's strong. It's growing. But there are some challenges associated with marketing into health systems that sort of crosses over with everything that Mark described.
Yeah. Got it. Yeah, it makes sense. All right. So let's talk about, what things look like from the marketing seat. So, Mark, when you talk to folks who are your peers, who are other marketing leaders, what's the real pressure they're feeling? Where's that coming from?
Yeah, so connecting to the story we were just talking about and what's happening in the market, it's really the fundamental shift in the buyer's mindset. Right. So with these hospitals operating on single-digit margins and the economic pressure, regulatory uncertainty, that all combined is forcing the CFOs to dramatically shorten the planning horizons. And that immediately has an impact towards the healthcare vendors. You can no longer sell.
Explain that. What does that mean when the CFO shortens the planning horizon?
Yeah. So they are no longer looking towards a 5-year plan, operating plan for the hospital or IDN. They're shortening it because of the speed which the economic changes are happening and the regulatory uncertainty. So those two things combined is basically forcing the CFOs to rather no longer think long-term, but bring it really in shorter term.
Are you talking about the buyer CFOs, or you?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay, so like CFOs at a healthcare system is basically saying, I don't care what this solution is going to, impact it's going to have on our patient wellness, on the patient care. I mean, they're not going to say it that way, but what they're really saying is, are we going to be able to see the economic impact of that within a much shorter time frame, not 5 years, 2 years, or 3 years, right?
That's right. Yeah, and they are scrutinizing every purchase through that lens. Right. So that is one part. And what's making it really hard, going back towards, hey, what's the impact for the marketing leaders of health tech firms? Is while this CFO is looking for a faster ROI, your champion, like the people that you're marketing to, still need to sell the solution through a buyer's committee of, we've heard 7 to 15 stakeholders. Right. So that is making it all longer. So it is really proving the value faster is the solution there, but it's really easy to say that. And particularly for organizations with innovative solutions that are in the startup phase and don't have that proven ROI quite yet in towards the market.
It's really challenging. It's really, really challenging. Matthew, what are the nuances in the biotechnology and life sciences space with regard to, we're going to stay in the B2B world, not spend too much time on B2C, it's because that gets really complicated.
Right. Yeah. I think that unlike maybe health tech, biotech doesn't have the luxury of being able to compress timelines at all. I mean, patience is built into the biotech sector for conducting sort of large-scale clinical trials, pivotal trials, etc., interventional trials, randomized trials. The lifeblood of biotech is proving through evidence that you have a product that A, works, B, doesn't do harm, right? And to Mark's point, if you are a biotech leader and you're trying to sell into a health system, you can't cut corners. You have to have gotten to a stage where you have credible scientific evidence. And that takes time and energy. I mean, a massive pivotal trial is very, very expensive. So It's not for the faint-hearted. I mean, there are ancillary, I guess, adjacent technologies around that sort of core where things can move faster. But generally speaking, the industry has to do it and do it right. Otherwise, there can be, like a real disaster, both from a reputational point of view and the investment community can start to withdraw funds. If you make a single marketing mistake, and it can be a marketing mistake, not just a sort of failure in the product. If you make a false claim, and we've all heard about Theranos, where a false claim is a fraudulent claim, which is an extreme. But generally speaking, false claims will ruin your reputation, not just with the FDA, but with the entire medical community and your peers and everybody else in the ecosystem that you rely on. So marketing is sort of in a hot seat. It is partnered with legal, medical, regulatory, and simply can't make mistakes. And so there's no point, in fact, it would be rash to rush anything in biotech. So you've got that competing pressure of, okay, we've got to prove ROI, we've got to get to revenue, the pipeline growth, and the rest of it. But if we make a mistake, we're really going to be in trouble.
That's such a great point, because, I mean, in health tech, there's a reputation. If you make a false claim, the buyers are going to see through it. They're going to call you to task on it, and then you're toast. So it's existential, but you kind of have to go out of your way to make it. Whereas in biotech, it's existential and worse, right? People can go, I mean, in the Theranos case, people go to jail. They went beyond making a minor mistake. They were obviously that was out and out institutional fraud, very different. Right. But yeah, the stakes are much higher. It's interesting. Neither of you mentioned AI. And so I'm kind of curious, like maybe, Matthew, you could pick this one up. AI, friend or foe for the marketer right now?
I think it's both. On the content side and the research side, I think it's helping all biotech companies accelerate and get things right faster. But there is still a lack of, going back to the credibility point, there's still a lack of faith that AI is compliant. So you have to lather, rinse, and repeat your activity with whatever is generated through AI from a marketing perspective to get to the sources and citations, because your medical legal folks are going to say, okay, upon what claim or evidence or source is this based? So yes, there are citations in AI, but there's always that lingering possibility of hallucinations and things being not right. So that if push comes to shove, biotech companies are going to rely on their own materials, not AI. But for some more superficial activities in marketing, it's obviously a force multiplier. Where it's having a really positive effect is in product development, is in, digital pathology and detecting kind of anomalies and, genetic sequence mutations and, 10x, 100x faster than through all means, or in radiology post-diagnosis, being able to interpret imaging faster and get to diagnostic resolution faster. So it's this sort of, we love AI, but from a science perspective, but we're really skeptical about it keeping us safe. The fear of messing up side comes in.
I mean, the distinction here is like what you're talking about from a marketing perspective is really using generative AI. But from a scientific perspective, it's the use of machine learning and I guess NLP, in the science of developing the product.
Yeah, I mean, what marketing folks are relying on is their own IT folks to develop their own instances of Copilot and the rest of it. And it's drawing on internally generated data, and it's not sharing it, sharing out, the generic.
It's not training the model, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So self-sufficiency is the name of the game, is not depending on the generic AI solutions, but getting to agentic and custom AI platforms.
Mark, on the health tech side, what's AI, friend or foe?
So let me give two perspectives. One is the perspective of people I talk to, and then two is my personal view on that. So I hear skepticism and limited use in primarily content creation. And then, we want to do more, but we're not getting to it. I'm generalizing it a little bit, but that's most of the answers that I get from marketing leaders. Now, my own view is very different. And I take a little bit of liberty to get to the point here, but I'm really passionate about interns and the concept of internships. I was an intern at Apple during my career at Apple, at Nuance, and any company I worked at, I always had interns. I see AI as basically an army of interns. They're not super smart, but it's an enormous amount of manpower available for you at rapid pace, but they need to be instructed very well. And so if I look towards different things that we always need to do in marketing, and whether this is research, whether this is list uploads, whether this is looking for attribution, and that there is so much work that needs to happen, where now AI can, like, taking that work, which yourself you can't do, you typically don't have the resources there, in, like, the environment that we are in. Most healthcare technology marketing teams are lean. And here you have a tool towards your disposal, which can really help in the efficiency. So that's my advice there.
Yeah, I think a couple of comments just to support that. Yeah, I agree. It's having this wonderful array of interns in every conceivable topic at the PhD level.
Yep.
So that wasn't always the case. The sad side effect of that is people recruiting less human interns, which I think is going to have a long-term deleterious effect on talent within every industry.
I agree. Ironically, though, our first intern we hired to help developing our AI stack. So yeah, maybe
I think that's big advice to interns that, hey, become your own AI agent and
exactly
manager.
Get smart on it. And he's great. He's been really, really helpful. So given everything we've just talked about there, what's the impact on marketing budgets? Let's start, Matthew, with Biotech.
I think that they will hold steady. I think there's downward pressure. What I'm hearing is sort of flat, not growth. So I think we're in this sort of do more with less with a flat budget environment among biotech companies, which is itself a form of downward pressure because, to grow, you really need to grow the marketing budget as much as anything else. But I mean, if you put yourself in the shoes of the CFO, who's really, they've got bigger fish to fry. They're looking at, overall operating costs, cash flow, headcount, ROI, general burn rate. The marketing budget is usually a blip. I think there's generally an underinvestment in marketing, except for those, putting consumer aside, except for those that are generating demand through direct to consumer. I think there's a general underinvestment in marketing, and there's an over-indexing on sales investments. Marketing always seems to fast follower of the sales budget. That is usually, there's less ambition to become marketing leaders among biotech companies. Partly for all the reasons we described, is that this really isn't about, glossy ad production, nor is it about vanity metrics around digital execution at scale. Biotech companies are, I think, better positioned for account-based marketing, of looking at each of their customers in a sort of one-to-few environment, which inherently can be less expensive. But ABM implementation is quite low too. So I think it's okay for budgets to stay steady and to be relatively proportionally lower than other operating budgets. But I think biotech companies need to wake up to the power of account-based marketing as a multiplier for the effectiveness of their marketing strategy.
In the health tech sector, what I'm seeing is kind of like it's a bifurcated market. Some companies are continuing to invest and other companies are slashing. And I'm sure there's a whole bunch that are sort of keeping, flat is the new up and doing more with less. But I haven't got a sense from what you said there that it's as bifurcated maybe in biotech.
Well, I think it's just bifurcated by company size. I think that the smaller companies are feeling the pressure, and it's harder for them to even sustain a marketing budget in terms of the pressures that we were talking about earlier. The larger companies, they tend to be portfolio companies. So if one area of marketing fails, another area of marketing will contribute to the bottom line. Going back to what I was saying before, the smaller biotechs with single non-portfolio strategies, it's both more important to get marketing right, but also there's less resources to do so. So it's a bit of a squeeze from both ends. Oh, there's one exception though, Adam, is I think with some of the startups that are going for a quick exit strategy, they are very often tend to put a disproportionate amount of budget into marketing because they're trying to attract investors and create excitement in a way that those that are not pre-commercial but have already marketing products. So it's a different attitude.
Yeah, got it. What about on the health tech side, Mark?
It's a small band, but then it's going down, it's staying flat, it's going up. I think it's different categories. What I see in research, AI, SaaS, up, small percentage. And then the majority of the rest is either flat or down. Yeah. But it's not dramatically down. It's not going down with 25% or so. Those days are over. It's just like in general, it stays relatively flat.
So as a head of marketing, what do you need to do to justify your budget? What can you do to protect or even grow it? Mark, let's stay with you on that and come to you afterwards, Matthew.
Yeah, of course. I think there's only one answer to that, and that is have focus on pipeline generation. If the head of marketing cannot articulate how his program, how his department, how his team is helping on pipeline generation, then there is no value for marketing. In the end, nothing else matters. You can have a great booth at HIMSS. You can have an excellent webinar with 600 people showing up with backers, and you can create great content. But if it doesn't contribute towards pipeline, it's not defensible. So that is easier said than done. I think where it becomes really interesting is those heads of marketing that are able to say, okay, I realize that. So now what do I do with that information? And so the smart ones take that and say, how do I contribute? And getting the numbers from marketing ops team, making sure that there's alignment with RevOps and other teams, and then build a dashboard and share that proactively internally with your counterpart, with your CEO, your head of revenue or the head of sales, and making sure that you control the narrative.
Yeah, I agree with everything Mark said. And I think the marketer for a biotech company needs to sort of look at two extremes, really. One is, I've got to build the brand because I'm not going to get, citations in AI answers or anything else. So that a large-scale investment in brand building becomes even more important. And then at the other end of the scale, becoming a decision support for the buyer committee as opposed to just treating them as anonymous clicks and marketing qualified leads. So that, really thinking carefully and deeply about the role that marketing has in reducing the regulatory review timelines. What is its contribution there? That's got nothing to do with clicks and lead gen, right? Optimizing peer discussions similarly, that's really about presenting the business case for, ultimately improving the quality measure scores for payers and HEDIS and staff for health systems, etc. Again, that's a sort of a collaborative model with payers. Yes, you need to attract payers that maybe you have no relationship with, but once that's done, it's really a sort of sit down and work it out as opposed to, just sort of stimulate. And then in health systems, really getting a gathering of KOL leaders to go over the unmet need that you are addressing in health systems, similarly with clinicians and HCPs. I think what's working is shamelessly leveraging your chief medical officer in what, emerging field of sort of science to business, which was more of an academic thing. But I think it's like really critical in biotech to have a fantastic CMO that acts as a spokesperson and leverage that, because that's where the credibility lies. And then, have your narrative together on EHR integration, how you make it easier for health systems to integrate a novel test or a novel drug, and de-risk from a commercial perspective the decision that sales leaders have to make in terms of market timing. I think that the intelligence that marketers bring to when not to go to market as much as when to go to market with something is really critical. So sometimes silence is an element of your brand. Hold back, don't, be careful and come out when the date is there. Because if you miss far too early, you only have one chance at an early impression with your KOLs and other people.
Very interesting. That's a great point. Okay, I've got a final question for you both. And so I'll start with you, Matthew. So a friend of yours who's a CMO calls you one night and says, it's really tough right now. Everybody's saying what I should do. What should I stop doing immediately if I want to survive and thrive in the next 18 months?
Well, I was going to say, stop calling me in the middle of the night. I have a life. No, seriously, I would say the one sentence would be something like, stop selling marketing as a growth lever, start selling it as risk reduction. I think the article you wrote, Adam, was perfect. The growth will happen if the sensitivity and specificity and all the other metrics of the product itself are right for the market. And obviously you need to show how it is and there's a good fit for the market. But really engage with senior leadership to talk about how you're removing barriers, removing friction from the revenue pipeline through marketing. And just getting away from, we've got this fantastic LinkedIn glossy campaign, and think way beyond that. I'm not saying that that doesn't count, it does. But think through the business model, the ROA calculation, the impact estimator for outcomes at the patient level. Start thinking like your customer and present to the customer like-minded data as a marketing lead.
Mark, how about you?
I would say right now there's so many variables that are changing, whether it's internally or externally. On competitive side, hey, the search volume is down, buyer behavior is changing, there's new products, maybe a new positioning. And so the natural instinct of marketing leaders is, well, we need to address this, we need to fix this. To Matthew's point earlier, hey, you're being asked to do more things. Well, that doesn't work. You cannot spin up an initiative and a project team to address all of these different problems. You end up spreading way too thin, and in the end, nothing gets done well. Your team gets frustrated. And when anybody asks you what's working, you throw your hands up in the air because you don't have a clean view anymore. So stop the lower priority stuff. Focus on a few. I think that is really the best advice that I could give. You need to stop the lower priority stuff. And then those ones that have the discipline to focus on those fewer things, those are the marketing leaders that will survive.
I think that's a perfect place to end this conversation. Mark and Matthew, it was great having you on the show together. I really enjoyed it. It's a great way to spend a Friday afternoon. I hope everybody listening to this has enjoyed it as much as I have and picked up a few tips along the way. So thanks for that.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
What a great conversation. I certainly really enjoyed it, as you can tell. So thank you, Matthew and Mark, for sharing your perspectives. I want to leave you with 5 key takeaways. So marketing is always going to be judged as a pipeline growth engine, but it's also now being judged as a way, as part of risk management. If you can't clearly show how you reduce friction, how you shorten sales cycles, and how you de-risk the decisions for the buyers, and frankly, for your own management, you're in for a tough year, I'm afraid. Second, ROI timelines are shrinking. Buyers, especially their CFOs, are no longer going to accept 5-year visions anymore. They want to see impact in years or even months. Third, we all love AI, right? But it's not magic. It is leverage. And the teams winning right now are the ones that are using it like an army of interns, doing the kind of unglamorous work faster while keeping the humans firmly in charge of judgment, credibility, and compliance. Fourth is focus beats activity. CMOs who will thrive are the ones who will stop the lower priority initiatives, say no more often, and concentrate on the few things that actually move the pipeline. And finally, in both health tech and biotech, credibility beats creativity. Fancy campaigns won't save you. Clear value, evidence, and alignment with how buyers actually make decisions is what's going to be absolutely critical in 2026, maybe even beyond. So if this all resonated with you, and especially if you're feeling the pressure around budgets, AI, everything to do with marketing, frankly, and particularly proving value, I'd be happy to have a conversation with you. You can book a call with me in the link down below. And if you think of somebody in your network who might pick up a few words of wisdom from what Mark and Matthew have to say, please go ahead and share it with them. I'll be very grateful to you. I'd also be really grateful to you if you would give this episode a thumbs up. Please like it. please give it a whatever rating you think it merits on your podcast application. Whatever you do, it's going to help more people like you get exposed to this content that we're creating. So with that, I thank you again for listening or for watching, and hope to see you on the next one.